Thank you. Jane Seymour, what a pleasure to speak to you about the Glen Campbell Project. This issue is so close to you because one uncle died from Alzheimer's,
Right.
one uncle surviving or still dealing with it. And
Actually, one's still alive, and one died a long time ago. But the real issue, and then my now ex-husband, his aunt, is still in a nursing home and has been, at the end. I mean, really doesn't know anyone for a very, very long time. So it's an incredibly important issue to me. I think also one of the biggest issues about it is the fact that it touches everybody. And people say, oh, it's a problem for old people, but it really isn't. The problem is for the caretakers. The problem is for the next generation that might not have the money to be able to look after them. And what do you decide? Do you take care of your college education for your kids or your parents? And you can't leave somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia just running around. I mean, it's just not safe to anyone. And it's just such an incredibly tragic disease to have, because nobody wants to put that pressure on their family. Nobody, knowing that you have Alzheimer's, really wants to have their family suffer that much while you actually don't know what's going on. And I think the really interesting thing about doing the Glen Campbell I'll Be Me project was that he was diagnosed, he knew what he had, and then I don't think he really understood really what it was, but he knew he wanted to make a difference. And so it's an incredibly poignant movie because you can see him saying and wrestling with his words, just saying, I'm doing this because I want to help people who have this, forgetting completely at this point that he even had it himself. He just kept thinking, well, there are things I don't remember anymore, and there are some things I just as soon forget. And it's an extraordinary movie because it's very moving, but it's also very funny because Glenn was hysterically funny. And I think in life, when you can see the funny side of things as well as, of course, the sad side of things, you can somehow put the whole thing together as a human experience. And when you see a family come together and the friends who come together to be caregivers, to help, to be there, it's probably one of the proudest things I've ever been involved with.
how were you able to strike that balance? Because here we have an icon in country music, 8 Grammys, more than 50 million records sold, going through Alzheimer's. How were you able to strike that balance of preserving dignity of life, but at the same time showing the reality of what Alzheimer's can cause, not only to the individual, but also to the family? How were you able to strike that balance?
Well, James Keach, who directed it, my ex-husband, he and all of us, we were asked to do this project because we'd done the movie Walk the Line about Johnny Cash, who was a good friend of ours. So the Julian Raymond, who is the one that's actually co-wrote that famous song, he and Glenn's family came to meet us, and they trusted us. They just trusted that we would, if they showed us everything and gave us, full ability to film and document everything, that we would have the taste to do it in such a way that it would be a dignified experience. But I think,
by the way, you did that.
Thank you.
Dignified, and you showed the taste.
Yes, but at the same time, it was important that you could see him losing it. It was important to see how dangerous he could be. It was important to see how lost he was. It was important to see how hard it was for her, how he'd walk out, and out of the hotel rooms and start knocking on everyone's doors, how he didn't even know where the bathroom was in his own room. I mean, really important things. It was important to show both sides, but at the same time, we had no idea that we thought he might do 5 weeks of shows. We didn't know it was going to be a year and a half of sold-out venues all over the place. And I was at many of them. I think I was at about at least 10 of them. I was with him at Congress, and I saw him there, speaking like Donald Duck just as he went in to meet Nancy Pelosi. And the impact he had even in Congress, I think, was extraordinary because, everything is sort of bipartisan, and it was fantastic. Everyone came together. They all came there to the Library of Congress, and they all sat right next to one another, and they all said together, we don't care if we're Democrats or Republicans, this is a huge, huge issue for this country, in fact, globally. But when we're talking to our government and they realize that this amount of money is spent on Alzheimer's and this much is spent on cancer and AIDS and a lot of very important things, but we can't disregard this huge issue of Alzheimer's. I think I was told, and excuse me if I get it slightly wrong, but by 2050, the cost for the American government to take care of people with Alzheimer's and dementia will exceed the national defense budget.
That's a lot of people.
That's a war at home, isn't it? That's a lot of people. And so I don't think I know a single person that hasn't been affected by Alzheimer's. When we do a screening and we ask people afterwards to raise their hand if they're in some way personally affected by Alzheimer's, 90% of the people in that room will raise their hands.
During the Oscars, the song from your documentary is also a Oscar-nominated song.
Yes.
I'm sure you'll be watching the show, and hopefully you'll want to take home that trophy.
Well, the trophy goes to the writers, which would be Glen Campbell and, of course, Julian Raymond, who really wrote the piece. And the words and the inspiration for the song really came from Glen's words when we were working on the documentary. It's an absolutely moving, extraordinary song. I'll be watching it at Elton John's Oscar party. And interestingly enough, Elton apparently said that he felt it should win. And he also said that he felt it was, if it didn't, anyway, it was, in his opinion, one of the best songs ever written. So to have Elton John, who is...
If Elton says it, Jay Ryan, if Elton says it.
My favorite to say that. And he, under that endorsement, he said, you can tell anyone you like. So I'm going to be in the right place for the Oscars. I'm going to be right there at Elton's party. I'll be able to give him a big old hug and thank him anyway for bringing awareness to the project. And it is such a great song. And the fact that he was able to sing it, was astounding. He had to do it in little tiny increments, but he sang it and performed it with the Wrecking Crew, who, of course, were the most famous musicians. He was part of the Wrecking Crew. They did all the actual recordings of all the, all the famous songs. Everything from Frank Sinatra to the Beach Boys to everyone.
Your final message, ma'am, then to the families who have been touched by this documentary beyond belief. What do you want them to know? Those folks that may be in despair, don't know who to turn to, who to talk to, and can see the Glen Campbell story and say, wow, if he is so courageous to share his story, how can I help a loved one?
Well, it's very interesting you should say that, because my whole mantra in life is about opening your heart. And it came from my mother, who said, when life is tough and you feel something's insurmountable, your instinct will be to close off and not let anyone know. Big issue with Alzheimer's. People don't let anyone know, the families are embarrassed, they don't know how to deal with it. But like my mother said, if you can accept what's happened, open your heart and somehow reach out to be helpful to someone else, you will find purpose. In other words, if you're dealing with Alzheimer's, there might be someone who's just been diagnosed, that you can help them along the way. And really, I think as much as anything, the message is to the caregivers. Alzheimer's patients rely on caregivers hugely, and we have to take care of the caregivers. That is the single most important thing that we can do. And I think, have faith, because now with the attention that this film is getting, and also the film Still Alice, people are beginning to actually do something about doing more research and trying to find out what they can do to prevent it, what they can do to diagnose it. And I think one of the the biggest issues is they can now diagnose it quite early, but do you want anyone to know that you have it? Do you want to know yourself? So it's a big dilemma. It's one of those diseases that if you know early, there is something you can do. But do you want to know? So, it's really, really a huge issue. And I would say, if you know someone who has Alzheimer's, take care of their caregiver. Be there for the caregiver, be there for their family, and obviously be there for the one who's suffering. But in my family's experience, I've seen that it's the caregivers that sometimes suffer the worst.
Jane Seymour, thank you so much for an amazing documentary. You and the team, right, the team concept.
Yes.
Doing it with taste, with love, and just for talking to us about the project. And hopefully the songwriters will take home that Oscar.
Well, we got the Grammy for not even best song for a movie. We got it for, best country song. how amazing is that?
I'm getting a wrap.
Okay.
Best of luck with everything. And say hi to Elton John for us.
I will.
I will. Tell him I said hi. And enjoy.
Thanks.
Thank you.